All right, back for another beer review, and today I'll be reviewing yet another beer from the Thomas Hooker Brewing Company, and they are out of Bloomfield, Connecticut. And this is their Brewer's Cut, the maple variant, and this is the 2020 release. So they're calling this one an Imperial Stout that is aged in maple syrup bourbon barrels. It comes in at 10.8% alcohol by volume, no IBUs listed, time of review. This bottle is approximately 15 months old. I'm going to give a huge thanks and shout out once again to a very good friend of mine and viewer of the channel, Steven, for hooking me up with this one. So big thanks to him for this beer. In the description box, I'll post a link to the beer mail boxing video I did that contains all the goodies he hooked me up with. And this is the last non-mystery slash whodunit beer that I'm reviewing from Steven. And again, I can't thank him enough for all of the beers. A couple days ago, I actually reviewed from Revolution their Maple Deep, the 2020 release, which is an Imperial Stout aged in maple syrup bourbon barrels, but also in addition to the maple syrup bourbon barrels, they also, I think they said, sweeten it up with the barrel-aged maple syrup that were in those barrels. This one doesn't do the same, but does have a little spiel here on the side that I'll read before I pour it in the glass. It says, Brewer's Cut began its journey, I guess, what? Brewer's Cut began its journey to your glass in October of 2019. For this vintage, we are excited to release 3 barrel variants of the same base beer. Following fermentation and brief conditioning in stainless, we laid this variant to rest in Maplecraft / Litchfield Distillery bourbon barrels for 11 months. The result is a silky, smooth Imperial Stout with tasting notes that I won't read. Bottled October 2020, style barrel-aged stout, 10.8. So, like I said, I'm pretty sure they're using maple syrup bourbon barrels in this one, and that's all I know about it. I've reviewed only one Thomas Hooker beer, and I did it with the couple good friends of mine and fellow beer tubers, Dan and Mike over at FLX Beer Reviews. We posted on both of our channels. Hopefully you'll see that before this one. We haven't posted it yet as I'm reviewing this, but if not, just know that I already reviewed Thomas Hooker beer from Steven, and he also sent me one, or gave me one back in the summer for around the 2021 Beer Tuber Palooza, but I drank that one off camera. So I've had a couple Thomas Hooker beers, really enjoyed them. This is the first like big barrel-aged beer I've had from them, and hopefully it's delicious. Let's give it a pour. Oh, so it's pouring out really thick, and it doesn't look like it has a ton of carbonation. We're going to try to give it a hard pour here. Try to get a good head going here. Okay, we'll go like that. Yeah, I think we can get a decent head by the hard pour there at the end. I'm going to cheat a little bit. Oh, interesting. Interesting. All right, so that has sheets of alcohol. At 10.8%, I expected it. And I can smell the booziness from over here. Where do you think you go? Where do you think? No, not going to get all over my coasters. It's not going to happen. Anyway, that looks great. It has this pitch black color, even in person, about a 3/4 of a finger of this dark brown, crazy, creamy, almost nitro-esque head. Like I said, a hard pour, but we only got about a half a finger, 3/4 of a finger, but that looks fantastic. Coating the glass. Beautiful looking beer. And I smelled booze as soon as I cracked it and poured it, so let's get a nose. Oh, that smells awesome. So the spirit is going nuts. And again, I think they're maple syrup bourbon barrels. Obviously, this is the maple variant. It says maple, was it Maplecraft / Litchfield Distillery. I'm pretty sure it's maple syrup bourbon barrels. If somebody out there thinks I'm wrong, then call it out, because I don't know for sure. I didn't look up much of this, just read the side. That's what I figured. But yeah, there's a ton of the spirit. I'm getting like an oak presence, vanilla, just tons of the bourbon itself. I'm not really getting any maple. The base beer has this really nice, like, super roasted malt quality, almost charred, but not quite. A lot of dark fruit. There's raisins. There's dark cherry. A lot of bittering dark chocolate. Maybe some vanilla. Over top of it, though, there's this, like, like generic, like, earthiness that I'd imagine has a little bit of bitterness, maybe from the hops, even though it's 15 months old. It doesn't smell super sweet, but it does smell boozy in the nose. Now there's this, again, when I've had maple, especially maple in beers that are older, say 6 months to a year, or maybe even older like this, 15 months, the maple for me more often than not in the nose turns into like a generic sweetness, and I'm kind of getting there here. There's a slightly bumped up sweetness, but I wouldn't call it maple. If I was doing this as a mystery / whodunit beer, there's no way I'd be calling out maple. Not in the nose. But It smells fucking great. It smells like a really, really well-balanced, delicate, robust barrel-aged Imperial Stout. That's what it smells like. So let's get into it. Cheers, everybody. Thanks again, Stephen. So I get the maple in the taste, but very small but noticeable. Body, this is like lower side of full body. Maybe a bit thin at 10.8%, but I don't really care. It's thick enough for me. It's not chewy, but I didn't expect it to be. The mouthfeel itself, really soft and smooth. Definitely, it's mildly carbonated, so that's where the softness is coming from. But it has a smooth, almost creamy-ass kind of feel to it. Man, the barrel is really kicking out this really dry oak tannin kind of feel to the beer on the palate. So let's go with the tasting notes here. Right at the tip of the tongue, there's roasted malt, not as like almost charred like it was in the nose. It's just really roasted malts. A little bit of coffee roast, bittering dark chocolate, like a 70, 80, 90% cacao bar, really bittering chocolate. And that hits right at the front of the palate, like that all intertwines, and it's weird because it's kind of like bitter and roasty at the front of the palate, but as it continues through, sweetness starts to creep in a little bit of that generic maple kind of feel to it, which I know is maple because I know there's maple syrup bourbon barrels, but if I was doing it blind, there's no way I'd call it out. There's almost like a Concord grape, sweeter dark cherry, little bit of like a molasses. So there's some sweet notes here, but they don't last long. Because as it goes through and continues through the palate, on the back of the palate, there's this big blast of vanilla that hits. And that's where I think like the sweetness or the decadent kind of vibe to this beer just stops about 2/3 of the way through the palate, because as soon as that vanilla hits, there's this huge oak tannin dryness that comes in, and it's mixing in with the spirit. So you're getting nice like bourbon-esque kind of feel to it, like a spicy peppery bourbon. But there's this huge dryness that envelops the palate from back to front. So it starts at the back of the palate and just creeps along the tongue and the palate as a whole and just dries out the entire palate. This is bone dry to me. Like the palate is bone dry, which is crazy. I didn't expect that. A little bit of like a generic earthy bitterness on the back of the palate too. But I would be lying to you if I said like, oh, yeah, this and that's going on. Like 2/3 of the way through the palate to the finish, it's just dryness, oak tannin dryness. It's like you took, a popsicle stick and just like held it on your tongue and like twirled it around for like a half a minute. That's the type of dryness I'm talking about. While it's big and I can tell it's boozy, there's no astringency on the palate. Like it smelled boozier than it actually tastes. The reason why I would guess this is like 10.5%, if I was doing a blind, I think is because I can taste the spirit. I get that big oak tannin dryness, just the body and mouthfeel itself, especially the body being as big as it is. I know it's a bigger beer, but I will say they hide the alcohol quite well in this one. I don't like this as much as the Revolution Maple Teeth. I just don't. I think that one was a more decadent, like desserty kind of beer. Not super sweet, but definitely sweeter. And again, I mentioned this seemingly like every third or fourth review I do. When I get a beer that's super dry, it's just not for me. I want this beer not to be as dry as it is. Like I want a little bit more sweetness. I feel like that dryness kind of doesn't kill the beer for me, but it makes it less drinkable for me. Yes, my mouth is dry and I want to go back for another sip, and I do. But then it's rinse and repeat. And I don't think the flavors are good enough to make me want to drink all of this and be super happy about it. I do think it's very tasty in general. I think it's a well-made beer. I just think, for me, somebody who doesn't like a big dryness, not exactly my jam to that aspect. So if you like dry beers, this is you all day. I wish I could, a little bit more maple. I think this is really good though. Like I do. I think it's good. But when you review a beer like this, you kind of have to break it apart and dress it down a little bit and just get into the nitty gritty. And I try to do that. And I may sound like I'm negative about this beer, but I'm not. I'm taking sips. I'm enjoying it. This is a really good beer. It's just, in my own mind, I'm comparing it to the Revolution Maple Teeth, and I don't think this beer touches that one. I think you gave that one like a 4.65. This is nowhere close. but it's solid, it's good, it's fun, it's tasty, it's enjoyable. I just want less dryness, more maple sweetness, and I'd be a happy camper. That said, it's good, and I got to give an appropriate rating. So I'm going to give the Brewer's Cut Maple Variant, the 2020 release from Thomas Hooker. I have no problems giving this a high 4 out of 5. I go 4.1 out of 5. So again, that's a good score in my opinion. But when we're talking about a low 4.75 for Revolution Maple Deep, you know, you're talking about a difference of 0.55. So you're a half-point rating difference. That's the difference between like a Revolution barrel-aged beer and a Thomas Hooker barrel-aged beer. But I don't know. This is the first one I've ever had, so it's tough to compare. Plus, they're both 15 months old. They're not fresh. At the end of the day, though, I'm not going to sit here and complain about this beer. Outside of like that dryness, I do enjoy it. I'm going to try to drink the rest of that bottle. I think I'll make it through most of it. And, you know, sip on it throughout the night and see how it goes. So price and availability, I have no fucking idea. So Steven, if you know what you paid for this one, which I'm assuming you have an idea, throw it in the comment section. Let me know. I'd love to hear what a bottle of this goes for. At 16.9 ounces, 500 milliliter bottle, I would not want to pay more than $1 an ounce. So I'm hoping this bottle was no more than, you know, 16 bucks a bottle, hopefully more in like the 12, 14 range. But, you know, let me know, Steven. And availability, I have no idea with Thomas Hooker stuff. We don't see stuff here in West New York. That's all I know. But I do know they get, I think, decent distro like throughout like the New England area. But at the end of the day, I'm so happy Steven sent this one my way along with the other beers. It's always fun to try new, different beers. I've never had Thomas Hooker stuff, and still he hooked me up with a couple cans of their hop forward beers than this one. So a lot of fun. If you've had this one before or any of the variants they've released, let me know what you think about it. If you drank this one fresh, let me know what you thought. And if you drank this one aged, let me know what you thought about it, because I'd be curious to see if like the maple was more prominent, like in your face from the maple syrup bourbon barrels, or if it maybe was never big to begin with. So I'd be curious to know. Anyway, thanks again to Steven for hooking me up with this one. Thanks to everybody stopping by for another beer review here on the Beer Patrol. To the next one. Cheers.